I'm Chris Lee of Southeastern 14, presented by Steaks. Big game this week. Alabama visiting Arkansas. Here to talk about it, Tony Tsoukalis, TideIllustrated.com. Tony, big game for Alabama. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, it should be Alabama's biggest game of the season. And I know they always say that the next game is the biggest game, but in this case, it should be the biggest game to date. Tough trip to Arkansas. Would have liked it to be a top 10 matchup, but Arkansas had that late loss to Texas A&M, and so it's the top 20 matchup instead.
Yeah, the tip of the goalpost had other ideas.
Exactly.
But that's the hand we're dealt. What do we know about Alabama 4 games in? Because Alabama's had 3 complete mismatches. The game with Texas that surprised everybody. Since then, Alabama has flattened ULM and Vanderbilt as it was supposed to. Don't really know that told us a lot. What are we thinking of this team after all that?
We'll start on defense because we know, at least we know the defense. The defense is as solid as everyone thought it was going to be. It could be special. At the beginning of the season, I would have told you that the strength of it was going to be the pass rushing, and it still very well could be. I mean, not many teams have pass rushing, trios that compare with. Actually, no team has a passing trio that compares with Will Anderson, Dallas Turner, and Chris Braswell. I mean, that's just lethal. But really what Alabama's done the best is stopping the run. They're holding opponents to 62.5 yards per game. I mean, they would have held Vanderbilt to single-digit rushing yards if not for like an 8-yard run on the last play of the game that really kind of no one cared about. So they've been great. It's not just been I know Alabama's had mismatches, but I mean, they held Bijan Robinson to 57 yards and 21 carries. So, I mean, that's a pretty respectable number as well. It seems like, they've got the cornerback position figured out. That was going to be the weakness. They had to replace 2 starters at cornerback, but Kool-Aid McKinstry's been solid. Terrion Arnold's kind of stepped up and been kind of one of the surprises so far this fall. It's a very solid unit, and they only have 1 turnover through 4 games, and they've still been this solid. Once they start getting those turnovers ramped up, assuming that they do that, this could be a really historically good defense. That's what we know about them on defense. On offense, we still don't necessarily know what this team's identity is going to be. At first, early in the season, they were kind of like they'd hit a big play here or there, but then they couldn't get short yardage plays sometimes when they needed. I mean, for example, they had the 80-yard run against Texas and then couldn't pick up a 1-yard 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1. And it's just, that's been more consistent over the last couple of weeks. But then you look at it, who have they played? I mean, they went into that game against Vanderbilt having 8 passing plays of 20 or more yards, which is not a lot through 3 weeks. And then against Vanderbilt, they had 7. So is it totally figured out? I don't know. Or maybe just this Vanderbilt team's not that good. So I think we're still kind of a wait and see. But the biggest thing I think that, Alabama's looking for on offense is consistency, because they've kind of shown that they can do anything. They've shown that they can run the ball, they can pass. But it doesn't matter of being able to put that together throughout a game and really having sustained drives. That's something you need against a ranked opponent like Arkansas, especially on the road.
Well, the other big question, and maybe the biggest question about Alabama coming into this game, you and I talked about this pre-podcast, who plays? Because several guys got, left the Vanderbilt game hurt or have had injury issues. Receiver is, who knows? Tell us what we know, what we think, what we don't know about Alabama's health going to Arkansas.
So in terms of who they might have lost or from the Vanderbilt game, Byron Young was on the field with crutches after the game. Nick Saban said he had a sprained ankle, which doesn't sound bad, but I mean, a high ankle sprain sometimes requires surgery. If he's on the field with crutches, I don't know if he's going to play this week against Arkansas, but just seeing the way that injury went, you would tend to think not. So that would be a loss. He's a starter on the defensive line. Alabama has people to replace him, but that's a starter. And then the other person that we haven't really found out about yet is Jordan Battle. And maybe by the time people are hearing this podcast, we'll have more news on him. But he kind of limped off, and I don't know if it could just be a precautionary measure. He didn't come back into the game, but it was also late in the game. So sometimes it could be cramps. It could be it could be a hamstring. Like, you don't really know. Nick Saban didn't mention it. It hasn't came up this week, so I don't know what his status is for the game. I think probably no news is good news from Alabama, but I think we'll probably find out more when we talk to Nick Saban next. And then as far as what Alabama could be getting back, all comes on the receiving core, where JoJo Earle is scheduled to be back, or at least that this is the date that Nick Saban said, the October 1st date that said he could return from his foot injury. Same thing with Tyler Harrell. Kind of seems like that's the date people are thinking he's going to come back. And we saw both of those guys along with five-star freshman Aaron Anderson. They were all. Aaron Anderson has a knee injury that's kept him out this season so far. All three of those guys, though, were warming up before the Vanderbilt game. They looked to be moving well. So I would tend to think that maybe all three or at least one of them will be available. Alabama posted photos from practice, and two of them were JoJo Earle wasn't in a black jersey. You can't tell from a still photo how he looked, but he was catching the ball. So I would expect him. I wouldn't be surprised if he and at least him and Harrell are available for this week.
Well, we saw this against Vandy. Vanderbilt was very vulnerable in the secondary, and Bryce Young was just a surgeon in the game. He threw for over 300 and 4 touchdowns in the first half. They just found the seams in the zone and went after him. You mentioned the big plays. Arkansas's pass defense has been even worse than Vanderbilt so far. Arkansas is giving up 8.3 per throw. Now, Arkansas has probably played a little tougher schedule too. But point being, especially with Jalen Catalon out, Arkansas has had a lot of trouble defending the pass. I don't think there's a lot of mystery about what Alabama will try to do on offense, with or without those guys.
Yeah, look, if it's a battle between Bryce Young or Alabama's receivers against Arkansas secondary, Alabama's going to win like 80-90% of the time. It's a matter of Arkansas actually getting to Bryce Young and making, either sacking him, forcing him into hurried throws, forcing him into bad decisions. Because I just think, like you said, if you give him the time to pick apart a secondary, he's definitely going to do it, especially against this secondary, which is just not strong. So Alabama would love to take advantage of that. I'm sure that they're going to try to. Alabama's done really well with the hurry up, the tempo offense. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to run that, maybe have some, especially early in the game, where you can have like some set plays where you can kind of just go on a run and kind of set things up pretty fast. I think that could be a way that they attack Arkansas. But one of the flip side to that is, if Arkansas is a team that can run the ball really well, do you want to go super tempo and then keep your defense on the field? Because if Arkansas is going to have these long sustained drives and Alabama is going to try to rush down the field, I mean, could that, if it does get into a track meet, is that something that they would have to worry about? But yeah, as far as attacking the defense, I expect them to be pretty pass heavy. It's something that they can really take advantage of.
Before we talk about Arkansas when it's got the ball, because I think that's going to be very interesting to see how that goes. Word from our sponsor, Stakes. College football season is underway. The best place to make your sports predictions without risking your bankroll is Stakes. Predict anything in the game. Take the game time excitement to the next level when you compete with your friends and other fans on the Stakes app. During their weekly competitions, you can build your predictions track record by winning competitions and earning NFT trophies for making the perfect calls. Go to playwithstakes.com/14. That is STAKES. Sign up, use the code Southeastern14, get a double welcome bonus. Everything is free. It's a lot of fun. No downside. Give it a shot, and I think you're going to love what you see. Okay, Arkansas has loved what it's seen offensively. KJ Jefferson will be on balance the best quarterback Alabama has seen since Quinn Ewers went out of the Texas game. Rocket Sanders has been great. I mean, Arkansas has got some weapons, but as you said, Alabama's got an exceptionally talented defense too. Even with some of those guys out. What is it that you're looking forward to watching the most when Arkansas's got the ball?
Yeah, I think if I'm Arkansas, I'm trying to keep the ball. I mean, I know KJ Jefferson can throw, and he actually played really well against Alabama, but I'm looking to slow things down. I'm looking to keep Alabama's defense on the field. Like I said, I don't think they're going to stop Alabama's offense too well. So I think that they've got to kind of slow things down, and you got to be methodical, and you've got to take care of the ball. I mean, Arkansas really can't turn the ball over at all. You got to capitalize on everything. So what they're able to do with KJ Jefferson and kind of use him in the running game, use him as a dual threat guy. He's a big guy, he's hard to tackle. I think mixing that, and they're a team that's not afraid to go deep either. So I mean, maybe kind of lull Alabama to sleep, and then maybe take a deep shot with some of those big receivers. They got 3 receivers that are all 6'3" or taller. Run, throw a jump ball. You know what I'm saying? And just kind of, you have to hit on some of those big plays. But I could see it being kind of a power attack from Arkansas and really trying to take some of the air out of the game.
A lot of people have circled games that are problems for Alabama. Nick Saban's teams, even the elite ones, which has been, well, frankly, almost all of them, other than maybe his first, they lose a game somewhere. I think you look at Knoxville as a possibility if you're going to say they lose a game somewhere, maybe at LSU, maybe at Ole Miss. How do you rank this one in terms of trouble spots for Alabama potentially?
This is one of the ones that I had actually – this is the game that I never really pick Alabama to lose, because I feel like every time I do, it's just, it doesn't – it's almost like they always surprise you. But if you were looking at a game that even from the start of the season, even before, in March, I think, as like I was projecting this one as a possible loss for Alabama. It just kind of makes sense. It's the first of a 3-game stretch where Alabama plays 3 tough teams. It's right before the A&M game, which could be, I don't think Alabama's going to look past this game against Arkansas, but that A&M game is so emotionally charged, just based on all the drama of this offseason, that they really want that one. So maybe that's the distraction. So there's a lot of like red flags, or like kind of like warning signs. I mean, like you're trying to predict the tornado. You can't really forecast a tornado, but you can look at all the conditions that lead to a tornado. That's kind of like where we're at. It's a road game. Arkansas is a good team. Arkansas is a team that probably gets underrated. Now they might be underrated again because they had that last second loss. It's funny, you have the 20th best team, but then if, like you said, the ball bounces a different way on a field goal off the post, all of a sudden you're a top 10 team, and, people are saying that this game could decide the West. You know what I'm saying? So it's just kind of interesting the way that all plays out.
Yeah, that's a good. I like the tornado analogy because, I mean, if you pick Alabama to lose an individual game, chances are you're going to look like a fool. But they've done this many times, and it usually makes them a better team in the end. It seems like when they lose one somewhere.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that's what the Texas game. I think what Alabama's hoping is for is like it got that quote unquote like the kind of loss, but it wasn't a loss. They were able to survive a wake up call, and so like that could end up being the best case scenario for Alabama, is that this is what happens when things go wrong, and you didn't even have to lose it. You got out of there without because if Alabama had lost that game, they would have basically had to play the rest of the season with their backs against the wall.
I'm going to really put you on the spot here.
Okay.
Alabama and Georgia play right now in Atlanta. Who wins?
Oh, I mean, I think I'd pick Georgia. But Alabama, I don't know. Do you see the Alabama team that played against Vanderbilt? Because that was a flawless Alabama team. I mean,
yeah, but I mean, I also see the Georgia team that played against, what was it, Kent State?
Yeah, so last week Alabama wins. You know what I'm saying? I think throughout the season though, you'd pick Georgia, but last week Alabama wins, and this Alabama defense is so good, and I know Stetson Bennett has been better, and I've doubted that kid forever, and so I don't know, maybe I should get off that. He's proven me wrong, but I just don't see I know I just picked Georgia, but one of the things is I don't really see, is Stetson Bennett going to do anything against his defense, because I think this Alabama defense is good, and it's getting better. This Alabama defense is so good, and it's not even getting turnovers. Imagine what it's going to be like when it's getting turnovers, when it's getting defensive touchdowns. I mean, they had one defensive touchdown from Will Anderson. That's the only turnover they've had. We'll see now, like what this is going to be like, or maybe that's a problem though. Maybe that's something that they don't figure out. I just think that the turnovers are coming. I think some of that's like circumstantial. I think teams are trying to play very conservatively or very controlled against Alabama. They're not trying to take too many chances, and when you get to the better teams, I think they're going to start taking more chances. And I think Alabama has what it takes to kind of expose teams in that regard.
Well, Bryce Young may be the best quarterback in the country. I'm going to guess he's not going to win the Heisman just because voters don't like giving it to the same guy 2 years, which I think is silly. But even if he doesn't win the Heisman, is he a better player this year than he was a year ago? I mean, he always could run. The rushing yards are way up this year. I think that's a function of just what maybe they're allowing him to do. But what do you see different for him, say, over last year? Is he a better quarterback? Where has he improved?
The running is different. He still doesn't like to run, and that part of his game really hasn't changed. I think people see the rushing yards and they're like, "Oh man, Bryce Young's that's another element to his game." It's like he had a few big runs because they were just there, but it's almost like he looks for it's almost like he, like in the middle of before he passes the line of scrimmage in his mind is like, do I have to, like, can I just throw the ball? So I don't necessarily think that part's changed. Or I mean, he's always been able to do that. The thing about Bryce Young that you could say that he's better this year is he doesn't have the same receivers. He doesn't have a Jamison Williams. And, I thought Jermaine Burton was going to be a better John Mechie, and maybe he is, but like he hasn't been so far. They haven't had anybody in the wide receiving core that's been as good as either of those two players. So they've got a talented wide receiving core. It's good. It has capable. You can win a national championship with what Alabama has at receiver, definitely. But it doesn't have those elite guys. I don't think there's a first round pick right now in the receiving core, at least at this current moment. You know what I'm saying? So there's probably players in that unit that will develop into one, but I don't think at the moment they're going to continue that streak of first round picks. So, I mean, what he's been able to do statistically with lesser receivers, not like there's quarterbacks out there that would be rolling their eyes at hearing the plight that he has with that receiving room. But like compared to last year, I think he's probably having to do a lot more and kind of spread it's not as easy as just like, oh wow, Jamison Williams is open 40 yards downfield, let me just heave a ball to him.
Yeah, the bunch that Mac Jones had, I mean, the problem is they've set the bar pretty high the last few years with the groups they've had. So like you can still be really, really good, and it's kind of like, wait, what's wrong here? This isn't that bunch.
Yeah, I mean, like, so Mac Jones had it in 2020, but like Tua in 2019 had that bunch plus Judy and Russ.
That was the best, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was just stupid. Like that one, you didn't even know how good that was. You know what I'm saying? Like, just
right.
It was just so great.
Yeah. Will Anderson got a shot to win the Heisman, or did he miss out on counting stats early in the first few weeks?
Well, the crazy thing, and I didn't realize that, I guess I was thinking the same thing. I was like, oh, well, he's out. But I forgot, that he didn't actually have a good start last year. He's actually ahead of his numbers, his schedule's numbers. Like, if he keeps up the pace, he's ahead of pace for last year's numbers. So, I mean, like, honestly, like, yeah, that he would be Alabama's best Heisman chance, I think. Because I don't think Young's going to beat last year's numbers. And then you've got other offensive guys, and I'm not going to rule out Bryce Young at winning the Heisman, but I don't think Alabama is going to win a Heisman this year. There's a lot of fatigue for that award, and you're not going to win it, 3 years in a row, and you're definitely not going to have. I don't think you're going to have. They don't like to give back-to-back Heisman, so there's a lot of things going against Alabama for the Heisman. But if they were to win 3 in a row, I think Will Anderson would be the guy that would have to do it. That'd be very on brand for Alabama, finding, they finally got that quarterback Heisman last year, but like finding, like, they feel like they have a different position every time winning the Heisman. So,
all right, you've got a big game to cover this weekend, but other good games in the league. You got Kentucky, Ole Miss, A&M, Mississippi State, even LSU at Auburn. It could be interesting for a whole different set of reasons. What's the game when you're not watching Alabama? you're going to most look forward to watching. Although I guess A&M State's kind of out because of the time slot. But
Yeah, I was
anyway,
gonna. That's actually the one that that's like kind of like what what Mike Leach does is he wins games like that, and then like I kind of want to see like what A&M is because A&M I thought was bad. You know what I'm saying? Like I thought like they were going to be great, and then I never thought I always thought Arkansas was going to be the second best team. But then they, and I thought I was being proven right because A&M didn't look great, and then they did end up beating Arkansas. So now I want to know if like does that kind of send them in the right trajectory, and then do they start winning, or did they just kind of get lucky against Arkansas, and do they maybe slip up with talk about a trap game, right? You just came off of an emotional win against Arkansas, and then you have State, who's like a weird team. They're not necessarily ever like a great team, but
and beat them last year too, by the
yeah,
way.
they're a weird team. And then you've got Alabama, and they're emotionally charged for that game as well. It's like so I think there's a lot that could be a really tricky game for A&M. I think the LSU Auburn game is just like you want to watch. Like Auburn is doing it's. They did everything they could to lose the Missouri the other week, and still,
Mm-hmm.
People talk about what's the hardest place in the nation to play. It's Jordan Hare, because no other place are you dealing with like some kind of supernatural force that gives Auburn a chance to win. I mean, like there's weird things that happen at Auburn.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a great place to play because the fans are great, especially for big games. But my God, there's some kind of like force field, like alien technology that's like making the ball bounce a certain way. All Auburn at home has to do
Kick
is
sixes and
yeah, they
yeah,
get so. I mean, the what's the play against Georgia where it just like ricocheted to the guy, and then they have
yeah.
a kick
The
six
Nick
the
Marshall
same year.
play.
There's always seems to be something that happens at Auburn in like clutch moments. Like it's so like Missouri had the game won, and then like Auburn Jesus took the
Yeah.
wheel and just he fumbled it at the goal line. So that's
Right.
what happened. Yeah.
I like the way you put that. Well, here's the strange thing. It went the other way last year in Auburn when Alabama played. Like, what if Auburn gets one stop somewhere? Like, how different are things for both programs right now?
But like also Alabama loses its best player, or like one of its best
Yeah,
not its best player, but like one of its top players on like a targeting call that was kind of like it was targeting. It's like it's one of those like it's another one of those plays that like man like of course that happens to Alabama in
right.
a game where like nothing's going right. Just like it's so yeah, I
But I
mean
mean, I get it. But humor me, like, okay, you can't have Brian Harsin on the hot seat if he beats Alabama, can you?
no, and like, is he gonna? I mean, they really, I wonder like if there's a pocket of Auburn fans that were like disappointed that they pulled off that win against
Yeah,
Missouri because they're just looking for reasons to fire Brian Harsin,
right.
and it's just like that might have been the last straw, and now they win that one and watch they beat LSU, you know what I'm saying, like, um, then what do you do? Because LSU is like 3-1, so you beat LSU, and then all of a sudden like you're 2-0 in the SEC. Things are moving well, So I don't know.
Yeah. I wish you could like set up this universe where you could make these conditions because like I would like to say like okay, Auburn fans, let's say you beat Alabama this year and say knock them out of the playoff. But with that, the other side of that is you get like 7 more years of Brian Harsin. Like, where do you put your bet on that?
I mean, that's kind of like what they had with Gus Malzahn. It's like they kept on trying to
That's a
fire
good
that guy,
point.
and he just beat Alabama, and they're like, well, damn it. Like they went from like firing Gus Malzahn to like giving him extensions because he beat Alabama.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, that's part of the job, though. I mean, if you don't beat Alabama, you're not going to stay there.
yeah. That whole thing has been just such a spectacle to watch, and at some point you kind of feel bad for Brian Harsin. I mean, it's so much of that's beyond his. I mean, he is getting paid a lot of money, but you know what I mean. I mean,
Yeah,
to live in that kind of scrutiny, to have the kind of off season he had,
they botched
there
that.
were some things there that weren't very cool that
And yeah,
happened.
it wasn't, and I don't think he was their first or second or he was down the line in terms of choices for their college, for their
Right.
coaching search, and I think that played a part in him not having immediate success. Well, not everybody wanted him. I mean, if you had like somebody like a sexier name, like if you had like Lane Kiffin had the same season that Harsin did last year, I think people are way more patient.
Yeah.
Speaking of, like, if we could change the uniform, the universe to have something like, let's have Lane Kiffin at Auburn. Like, man, do we need this?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I'm not sure he would even leave. I don't know if that's even to be honest with you, it's not a better situation because I wouldn't want to have to compete in-state recruiting with Nick Saban, But I would
Yeah.
love to see it. I'd love to see that rivalry with, you know, Kiffin and Auburn and Saban and Alabama.
Well, the other offshoot of that could be, the guy that beat Alabama a couple times, Hugh Freeze. I mean, it wouldn't shock
Yeah.
me if he got that job.
I was
Although
just
someone
thinking
threw
more
one
to
at
the
me.
fact of like the trolling that would go on. Like, you want to talk about like something that would
Oh,
reignite a rivalry, just yeah.
yeah. Well, here's the other one. What if Auburn? Someone threw this one at me today. What if Mississippi State goes on a losing streak to end the year? Which, if you look at the schedule, it could. State moves on from Leach.
Would Auburn like at that point like
And Auburn does not hire Hugh Freeze, and Freeze goes to Mississippi State. That's your other.
yeah, I mean, like, are you
Um,
saying that Auburn would take Leach? Because I mean, like, that would be at
no,
that.
no, no. I'm saying what if Freeze does
Oh,
not take the
yeah,
Auburn job? Because I think he wants to get back in the SEC somewhere.
yeah. Like, what would the dynamic be between like Freeze coaching
State
against?
makes a move and Freeze is the coach.
That would be kind of interesting because I'm sure that like there's a lot of State fans that would be having to take back a lot of things that they had said about Hugh Freeze.
Right,
That'd be a
right,
really awkward situation, right?
right.
In
It's
fact,
it's
I don't even
it's
know if they would do that, if State would do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are the optics on? I don't know.
yeah. I mean, we root for crazy, right?
Yeah, I do like me some crazy. So
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a crazy rest of the year. Do you see any scenario where it's somebody other than Georgia and Alabama and Atlanta?
not in Atlanta. I don't know if like I think I still believe that like I think we should have computers. I don't think I hate the committee. I think that's the dumbest
Yeah.
thing. We should just have the same thing that we had with the BCS, but then like make it 4 instead of 2. I feel like if there's a way to make it so that Alabama and Georgia both don't make the playoff, they're gonna do it. Like I just because from anything but like the right thing to do standpoint, it's just boring. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it's because you pretty much know it's going to be Alabama and Georgia at this point. I mean, there's a good chance at least. Do you really want to have 2 seasons where they played twice and one of them was for the SEC championship game and one of them was for the title game? They probably people want to see something else, but I think those two are clearly the best 2 teams. Maybe Ohio State would have something to say about that as well. But
Yeah, I
outside of
think
those
right
3
now
teams,
you got 3 teams. You got those 2 in OSU, and after that, I don't know who the 4. Maybe
well, if you
Michigan,
told me
but
that like a team outside of that 3 is going to win the title, I just wouldn't believe you. Like one of those
yeah.
3 teams will win the title.
Well, you know what's interesting is the computers love the Big Ten right now. Minnesota, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, like those 4 are all within the top 10 of a number of computer polls. So
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, like I think all that stuff evens its way out. Like that's the whole thing. I don't mind the computer polls. Like I actually trust it. Like I never had a problem with that. That wasn't the problem when we switched to the playoff. It was the fact that like you know, and I hate the 16 or the 18 playoffs. I hate all that. Like, no, the question was never like, was the 5th best team good? Did they deserve a shot? It was always like, was the 3rd or 4th best team really one of the 2 best teams? You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And we should have just kept the same thing we had and just added those 2 teams. You know what I'm saying? And that's perfect. We don't need to have 8-team playoffs or, I know I'm kind of going on a tangent, but like, I just really, that the whole point of this was to make sure that the 2 best teams played for the title.
right.
We have that kind of, so.
Well, I'll counterpoint you because it's, when it gets to 12 or whatever, here's the thing. It's like getting in the NCAA tournament is a big deal for a lot of schools. just saying you were there. I think that now I don't think they have a chance when they play Alabama or Georgia down the line, but just if you're I don't know if you're Appalachian State or Coastal Carolina or somebody like that. That's what I think is the cool thing. Just seeing a team that says, hey, we made the playoff one year. That part I think will be good for college sports. Now, what you said, here's the thing. We have this playoff now, and what is happening that like the blowouts are bigger than ever. Like even in the top 4 teams, there's such disparity that the games aren't even close, which I think is a problem, but that's a whole other topic. So
Yeah, yeah.
anyway, Tony, you've been a great guest. Enjoyed having you on. Tell folks where they can find your coverage of Alabama, Arkansas this week.
Yeah, it's the Alabama Rival site. The site's named TideIllustrated.com. You can follow us at Tide Illustrated. You can follow me at Tony _Tsoukalis on Twitter. It's just TONY_TSOUKALAS on Twitter. And, really love to have any Alabama fans, part of our community. We have a really nice message board, really fun place to talk about Alabama. So definitely check us out.
Well, Tony, thanks for joining us. I'm pretty sure that Alabama is going to be a factor down the line this season, and
I
we'll
think
we'll have you
so.
back again. All right.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.